On a national level, we really are seeing unprecedented numbers of cases as well as hospitalizations from flu, and it's not surprising. The majority of flu this season that's circulating is influenza A, and within influenza A, there's something called subclade K, which is a variant that tends to be more contagious. It spreads more rapidly, more readily, and that is why we believe we're seeing such an increase in cases compared to years past. Not only have we seen unprecedented levels of infection, but they also all occurred about a month earlier than we typically see. What we know about subclade K is that it's more infectious and it spreads more readily. Whether it actually produces a more severe or sicker, if you will, flu is really not clear at this point. But we know, of course, the more people that get the flu, the more folks that will end up in the hospital, just by numbers. The vaccine that we gave this year is not specific to the subclade K. However, there does seem to be some overlap. So my message is to folks, if you haven't gotten your flu vaccine, it's not too late. We do know that this year's flu vaccine will give you protection. It may not completely prevent you from getting sick, but if you do get the flu, we know it will actually make sure that your case is not as severe.
Western Japan shudders under a massive 6.2 magnitude quake, slamming shores and stirring nuclear nightmares. Fears explode anew of a catalysm megaquake as experts warn of underestimated risks at power plants. We dive into the tremors threatening millions. Take a look.
This is the moment a massive quake struck Japan. This is Shimane Nuclear Power Station shaking vigorously. The 6.2 magnitude monster struck western Japan, rattling homes from Shikoku to Kyushu, hurling furniture and cracking roads in its savage grip. Panic surges through the coastal towns, tsunami sirens wail, quake alert systems went into an overdrive. Just weeks ago, a 7.5 trembler scared the region. Now, this aftershock revives the ghost of Nankai Trough. A mega quake that could unleash $8 trillion in devastation, dwarfing 2011's horror. While the official megaquake advisory was recently lifted, this latest jolt proves the Earth does not follow government schedules. Chilling new reports suggest that Japan's nuclear operators, specifically Chubu Electric, may have underestimated the seismic risks to their facilities. At the Hamaoka nuclear plant, critics argue the defensive walls are no match for the true fury of a Nankai Trough megaquake. We are looking at a potential multi-billion-dollar disaster that could dwarf the $200 billion cleanup of Fukushima. The Nankai Trough is a ticking time bomb. It is a subduction zone capable of generating a magnitude 9 event that could send tsunamis racing towards the coast in minutes. Despite the high-tech sensors and the world's most advanced early warning systems, the recent cluster of activity suggests the plates are slipping. The government urges caution, but for the millions living in the shadow of the reactors, caution feels like a thin shield against a shifting continent. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Immigration crackdowns escalating in Minnesota. Edited video shows Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem during an operation Tuesday morning. Law enforcement sources saying 2,000 federal agents are deploying to the Minneapolis area. Senior Trump officials have fixated on the state and its Somali community following accusations of alleged welfare fraud.
How about the new thing in Minnesota with the Somalians?
Investigations are ongoing, but initial findings by the state cast doubt on some of the claims made in a viral video targeting Somali-run child care centers. Still, allegations and a federal probe have shaken the state's political landscape. Monday, Democratic Governor Tim Walz ended his bid for a third term.
Every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota.
Federal immigration enforcement previously targeted Minneapolis and its neighboring city, St. Paul. In December, following disparaging comments about the Somali community from President Trump, deportation efforts took place. Fear, anxiety, and protest ensued. This time around, the DHS saying it's had trouble booking hotel rooms for agents.
When they were using their government emails to try and get a government rate for their rooms, they were being turned away.
Hilton issuing several statements saying an independently owned and operated hotel's actions were not reflective of Hilton values, and the hotel was being removed from its system.
Hilton Hotels has officially dropped a Hampton Inn franchise in Minnesota after the hotel refused to allow federal agents to stay there, even after the issue became public. So this all started when the Department of Homeland Security shared screenshots of emails they say came from an employee at the Hampton Inn, which is owned by Everpeak Hospitality. Now, in those emails, the hotel made it clear they were not allowing ICE agents to stay at any of their properties. One email said the hotel noticed an increase in government reservations and flat out stated they weren't allowing DHS, ICE, or immigration agents. Now, it even asked the guests to identify themselves so that they could cancel their reservations. A follow-up email on January 2nd confirmed that at least one reservation had been canceled. DHS accused Hilton of being part of a, quote, coordinated campaign in Minnesota to undermine federal law enforcement operations. Now, Hilton initially responded by saying the hotel was independently owned and operated. The company said the hotel had apologized and reiterated that Hilton properties are supposed to be open to everyone and that discrimination is not tolerated. Now, as this is all unfolding, the same exact day, a journalist went undercover and tried to check into the hotel himself, posing as a federal agent with DHS. And this is what he was told by the front desk receptionist.
They'd be Department of Homeland Security.
So we're not accepting people from immigration, ICE agents, DHS into our property. It's just for management ownership.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought that changed today. Was that?
I just talked to my the owner of the building, and he didn't say there has been any changes. So
really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's just policy.
That appeared to be the final straw. The next day, Hilton's newsroom released another statement saying it was taking, quote, immediate action and removing the hotel from Hilton's systems entirely. Hilton said the owner had previously assured them that this issue was fixed. But the video raised serious questions that the hotel wasn't meeting Hilton's standards or values. Hilton emphasized again that its hotels are meant to be welcoming to everyone and said it was reminding all franchise owners of the rules to prevent this from happening again. For context, this is not the first time Hilton hotels have been caught up in immigration-related controversy. Around 2020 during COVID, some privately owned Hilton franchises, especially near the southern border, were being used by government contractors to temporarily house migrants, including children. Hilton later said it didn't want its hotels used as detention centers and told franchise owners to reject those types of bookings. Do you feel that there should be some sort of criminal consequences for entities that reject federal agents? Let us know below in the comments.
In a stern warning to China and Russia, U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said that the U.S. is rebuilding military dominance to a level so absolute that its enemies would not dare to test it. Hegseth delivered these kind of remarks at Newport News shipyard as part of a nationwide defense tour. Speaking on the U.S.'s recent military operation in Venezuela, Hegseth said it served as evidence of renewed American military readiness and the limits of non-American defense technology.
And third, we're reestablishing deterrence that's so absolute and so unquestioned that our enemies will not dare to test us. You see, under the previous administration, whether it was the debacle of the withdrawal in Afghanistan that cost American lives and smeared our reputation, whether it was the war unleashed in Israel after October 7th by Hamas, or the war in Ukraine that never would have started under President Trump, the world started wondering whether America really was strong and whether America really could lead. Well, that's over now.
Hegseth also issued a sharp critique regarding the effectiveness of Russian air defense systems in Venezuela. The U.S. Secretary of War said that Russian systems failed to activate when U.S. Special Forces operated in Caracas.
And then we saw 3 nights ago in downtown Caracas in Venezuela, as nearly 200 of our greatest Americans went downtown in Caracas. It seems those Russian air defenses didn't quite work so well, did they? downtown Caracas and grabbed an indicted individual wanted by American justice in support of law enforcement without a single American killed.
Both China and Russia have been long-standing allies of the now deposed President Nicolas Maduro. The capture of Maduro and his wife by U.S. military forces prompted strong reactions from Moscow and Beijing, with both sides condemning U.S. sanctions and calling for Maduro's immediate release. Let's now shift focus to Iran. The protests here are continuing and they are violent. People are taking to the streets in almost every province.
And authorities have launched a crackdown. Dozens are dead, but protests continue to spread. In the capital, security forces fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators at Tehran's Grand Bazaar on Tuesday. Protesters threw gas canisters amid clashes with police.
According to videos shared online, a large crowd gathered on a covered street and can be heard chanting slogans. These chants included "Death to the Dictator."
Another video showed a statue of late Supreme Leader Ruhollah Khamenei and his successor Ali Khamenei set on fire by protesters in the Sistan and Balochistan province. Iranian authorities have not published an official death toll. However, the US-based human rights activist news agency reported that death toll is at 36. It said that 34 of those confirmed killed were protesters, while 2 were affiliated with security forces. Over 2,000 people are said to be detained. The group relies on an internal activist network and has been accurate in its reporting in the past.
Iranian semi-official media reported that a policeman was shot dead by what they called rioters in Malik Shahi in the western province of Ilam. Malik Shahi is a district of about 20,000 people, many of them from Iran's Kurdish minority. There have been widespread protests and a violent crackdown by security forces in recent days there. The protests were triggered by anger over the rising cost of living. The wave began on the 28th of December with a shutdown by merchants in Tehran, in the Tehran Bazaar, that is, a national economic hub in the capital. It has since spread to other areas and students have also joined in.
Now, the government of President Masoud Pezeshkian has announced modest monthly payments for people to alleviate the economic pain.
The Iranian currency continues to fall, according to the informal black market rate and several currency monitors. Iranian rial in value has really fallen against the dollar.
Iran's judiciary has warned that Tehran will offer no leniency to rioters, but it added that the public has a right to demonstrate.
Now, the head of the country's judiciary, AJ, said that Iran listens to the protesters and their criticism and distinguishes between them and rioters.
Now to Europe, where Denmark is drawing a very firm line. The country's prime minister is urging President Trump to stop talking about taking over Greenland, calling the rhetoric dangerous, unnecessary, and flat out wrong. In a blunt public statement, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said the United States has no right to annex Greenland, reminding Washington that Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark and a NATO ally. She stressed that the U.S. already has wide military access to Greenland through existing defense agreements and that Denmark has poured billions into Arctic security. Then came the warning, quote, "I would therefore strongly urge the United States to stop the threats against a historically close ally and against another country and another people who have said very clearly that they are not for sale." The pushback follows renewed talk from Trump about annexing Greenland. In an interview with The Atlantic on Sunday, the president said the territory could be subject to U.S. intervention, insisting, quote, "We do need Greenland, absolutely." It also follows a provocative social media post over the weekend from MAGA podcaster Katie Miller, showing a U.S. flag draped over the island captioned, "Soon." Denmark's ambassador to Washington fired back, reminding the U.S. that Greenland is already covered by NATO's security guarantees.
Ayer el presidente Maduro declaraba ante un tribunal que es un prisionero de guerra. Y se declaraban como lo que son, inocentes, personas decentes que fueron injustamente quebrantada su protección inmunitaria como jefe de Estado y, bueno, vulnerado por completo las leyes internacionales y las leyes de Venezuela. El gobierno de Venezuela rige en nuestro país. Más nadie. No hay agente externo que gobierne a Venezuela. Es Venezuela. En lo personal, quienes me amenacen, lo digo. Mi destino no lo decide, sino Dios.
France breaks silence. Europe blinks. And Trump, he did not see this coming. Well, this was supposed to be very simple. Maduro gone. Venezuela, all destroyed. Washington celebrates. The West moves on. But Paris just changed the entire script. France has stepped into the Venezuela storm. Carefully but very clearly. Not cheering, they are not clapping, they are not following Washington's lead here. Instead, France is asking an uncomfortable question. Was this removal really legal? Was this the right way? You're watching Times XP. I am Dhriti Atri, and here's what France is really saying, and that too in a very simple language. Paris does not mourn Nicolas Maduro's fall. France, well, that country did not defend his record. France did not want him back. But France is deeply uneasy about how this really happened. A US military operation, a foreign leader seized, taken from New York, put on trial. For Washington, this was a justice. Now for Paris, this was dangerous precedent. French officials have now gone on record. They argue that the operation crossed legal red line. That international law, it was bypassed. That sovereignty was ignored, and that scares Europe entirely because today it's Venezuela, tomorrow who decides? This is the fear that is echoing across European capitals. Then comes Emmanuel Macron. The French president has done something extremely rare. He has publicly distanced France from the American method. Not loud, not really aggressive, but firm. Change and welcome, Paris says. But force? Well, it cannot become the new normal. This is not anti-America though, this is pro-rules. France is warning against a world where power replaces law and strength replaces consent here. But you know why this matters so much? Because Europe is trapped in a dilemma right now. On one hand, they have Nicolas Maduro's exit that opens door for reform. Venezuelans may finally breathe, and on the other hand, if military seizures become acceptable in the world, no nation feels safe. Europe remembers its history. Borders crossed, leaders toppled. Wars justified for stability. Paris did not want to go back there. So, France is walking a tightrope, welcoming political transition, rejecting military shortcuts, hope without any endorsement, approval without any applause. And this is where Trump, he is rattled because this wasn't expected from their ally at least. Not from France, not now. This isn't a revolt with tanks, it's a revolt with principles. So here's the bigger picture. The West is no longer speaking in one voice. Washington says that we act, we won, end of the story. After that, Paris replies, but at what cost to the world order? One arrest, two reactions, one alliance quietly strained. Venezuela may be entering a new chapter, a deadly chapter. But the global book rules, well, that's now under debate. Watch Europe closely because this is not just about Maduro anymore. This is about how power will be used tomorrow.
Why do countries have a military? To defend themselves, yes, but the US military also has another goal. They double up as oil hunters. History will confirm this for you. An impoverished country finds oil reserves. Immediately, the US military decides to liberate them. And Venezuela is no different, something that the internet pointed out.